Hi, friends, and welcome to the Gritt Podcast. I'm Mary Werdeman. Um, Welcome. It's been quite a hot minute since I have podcasted. And um, if this is your first time listening to the Gritt Podcast, welcome. I'm really glad to have you here. Otherwise, welcome back. Uh, this is the Gritt Podcast, Grit Relief. It takes time. Obviously, or maybe not so obviously, grief relief does take time, but it takes a lot more than just time. It takes hard work, it takes consciousness, and it takes awareness. And in order to heal, we have to have, first of all, we have to put out there that we have a desire to heal. So we have to have the intention to heal, and then we have to also then put, if we want to heal, we have to put some real action and consciousness behind that intention. And that is what the Gritt Podcast is all about. It's about my personal journey through grief, and now I would say it's what my journey through life has become. We were not meant to do life alone. Um, we were meant to be connected to one another. We are connected to one another. And not only were we not intended, I believe, to do life alone, we most certainly were never, we were never intended to do grief alone. Um, And so that's what my podcast has been about, is that I in my on my quest to find meaning and purpose in my journey, I have wanted to connect with other people who are experiencing grief, um, because it's my belief also that when we share our stories and when we share um, our hearts in an authentic way, that it helps others to feel more normal about what they're experiencing, and it also gives others permission to share their stories as well. And when we share our stories, then we connect with one another, and we realize that we're more alike than we are different, and it helps us. Um, so today's episode is really about some thoughts that I had. I actually did a little Facebook Live, so you could always go back and catch that on my page, Mary King Werdeman. I believe it was on that page. And I was talking about something that I saw when my husband and I were watching TV. We were watching a Netflix movie with Jude Law, and he was talking about his grief. His son had been murdered in this episode, and he was telling an acquaintance about his story and his journey. And she was, of course, she was very empathetic and very shocked to hear his story about his son. And in his effort to describe to her, he said that because she had also said that she had expressed sympathy for his wife and their relationship, and he said to her that they were together and that they had still had a relationship and they were very much together, but their journeys were very different in that they couldn't share their grief. He also said that grief was interesting or strange to him because you could go to the grocery store, you could obsess about feeling guilty for not using your gym membership, you could be cooking dinner, you go through all these seemingly normal routine sort of things, yet all the while you're carrying around this thing, or in his, what he said was that there's a gaping hole all the while you're doing these seemingly normal things. And then the line that really hit me is he said to her, mostly grief is just lonely, because everyone's journey is their journey. I added that part. Everyone's journey is their journey. But he said, mostly grief is just lonely. And in that moment, I agreed. In my mind, I thought grief is lonely, which is really, really interesting, because grief is lonely. Yet grief to me feels sacred, and grief feels holy. And I guess I'll expand on that. When I say that grief is lonely, I guess for me it's lonely, yet at the same time, it's what's driven me to find connection. So that feels contradictory, It's lonely, that loneliness, that idea that my grief is my grief, basically has driven me, keeps driving me to find others who are experiencing grief and to connect with them, to find that connection in an effort. I'm assuming, I'm thinking, I'm recognizing that doing that makes me feel more connected and less lonely in my own grief. And that's comforting. That's comforting. It's comforting to connect with people who are experiencing grief, and especially people in the past, for me, have people who are experiencing grief in the same way. Yet this journey, this lonely journey that has driven me to form amazing, profound connections with other people, has been very sacred to me. I saw a meme recently that a friend of mine on Facebook had posted, and it said, the magic you're looking for is in the work that you're avoiding. And that, I find that really interesting as well, because this thing that we're doing with grief, it's something that we don't necessarily seek. We're not looking to go through life and then have something happen that rocks us to our core, right? That breaks us wide open, that just breaks our heart, right? We're not looking for that. We're not hoping for that. I mean, certainly we know on some level that to be human is to go through these experiences that are going to eventually, we're going to lose people, and are going to cause us grief and suffering. But again, I've podcasted about this, we're somehow able to compartmentalize that, to put that off somewhere else. We don't focus on that, and we shouldn't, because we're trying to stay in the present moment, right? The present moment is where everything is okay. When we go to the past, we're living in the past where there's regret, or where there's remorse, where we wish we could change things potentially, or where we can't live there anymore, even if it was wonderfully happy. When we go to the future, we may be worrying and spending time obsessing about a future that we haven't lived yet. In the present moment, that's where life is happening now. That's where life is really happening. That's where we can breathe. That's where we can feel calm. So, so anyway, I got a little off track, but we go through life not expecting to be thrust into this thing called grief. You know, we have a hard time sometimes understanding why this painful thing has happened to us. This painful thing, or why painful things happen to seemingly good people, right? But what if we took a leap of faith and tried to realize and understand, or believe that this journey that we take through grief is an awakening, or it's um, it's an experience that's meant to open us up so that we return to who we deeply, deeply are, you know, that we can return to our source, that we return and become closer to God. What if that's what's happening here? What if when we are broken open, it strips away all of the masks and all of the beliefs that we came to adopt as our own, when we, you know, from the time that we were children, and that we just kind of took on from other people without actually understanding why, questioning why. And when we are rocked to our core by grief, it has this way of stripping those masks, um, making us, I guess, for lack of a better way to put it, making us question those beliefs and what we really believe, because we've been rocked to our core. And it, for me, it's kind of pushed me on this journey of finding, you know, who I really am. Who am I? You know, and that journey has not been a journey of, you know, an outward journey. You know, it's not like I'm looking for myself in books. Well, I take that back. Some reading things does help, but I mean, I'm not looking outside myself. What I've been doing, what I think that we all do, is we go inward. We look inside of ourselves, because that's where the answers are. They're inside of us. It's not outside of us. And that's where the work of grief is. That's where the magic of grief happens. We discover who we, if we're willing to, that's the invitation. The invitation is to go inside and discover the uniqueness, and discover your unique and deep purpose for living, you know, your purpose for being here potentially. And that doesn't have to be a grandiose purpose. That doesn't have to mean that you know, that you were meant to, I don't know, go out and speak to the masses, and or write a book, or do any of those things. You know, maybe it's just being more authentically you, you know, taking better care of you, taking better care of the people in your life that you love. That's, again, that's the magic of doing the work, because you find out what is unique to you. But I wanted to backtrack just a bit here, because I was reading something else. Hold on one second. Let's see. Okay. Oops. Okay. It's difficult to understand why painful things happen to good people. Fate is a mystery, right? What we do with those circumstances, the way that we respond to our grief, to what has happened to us, that's life's challenge. It's how we rise up and greet our destiny. And there can be so much resistance around that, right? I mean, for some people, well, for many of us, for me, what if you never wanted to, what if you never wanted to go on a journey of finding yourself? For some reason I did. For some reason, I've been on a journey for a long time, um, of self-discovery, I liked to read about uh, um, things that would make me a better person, help me to become a better person, the best version of me. I found that really fascinating and wanted to do that. But what if that wasn't you? What if you were um, living your life, every day just feeling so grateful for the life that you live, feeling happy in every moment, and just content with who you are. And then, somebody in your life is makes their transition, right? And then you find yourself on this journey that you never wanted to take. So there can be a lot of resistance there, because, here's this thing: good, painful things happen to all of us. Painful things happen to good people. But so then you have this resistance to that because it's hard to understand, especially since you maybe didn't have any kind of awareness, or, like as I said earlier, you just kind of put, the idea that this could happen to you over there because we're living, in the present moment, and that's great. But when it happens to us, then there can be a lot of resistance around that. And what I have found, um, I hope this will be helpful, but what I have found during periods of my life when there has been that kind of grief, for me, maybe the first time I can remember this was maybe around the divorce. My parents got divorced, and had a lot of resistance to that, the upheaval of my family and not understanding that. And then, of course, when my son made his transition 4+ years ago, what I found that eventually I came to a point where, I just had to surrender. I just had to, um, I was able to, and for me, I had to just put my faith in the idea that there's something bigger happening here that I don't understand, and that, um, maybe parts of it I felt I had some understanding, but ultimately I may not understand, and I may never understand until I transition myself. So I surrender to that idea. And the moment that I was able to actually surrender to the idea that my parents, were getting divorced, that despite the fact that they were getting divorced, they still love me, so much. And I never was questioned that. I did the idea that they love me, that largely everything in my life was okay. I felt an immense sense of peace. And now, for me, with the transition of my son, the idea that, I have a lot of different thoughts about it. Sure. My faith has helped me tremendously, but I surrender to the idea that there's so much about it that I just can't fully grasp, can't understand, and I just won't, until I make my transition. When I surrender in that way, it does bring me peace. and comfort, and it makes me feel better. So I hope that that's helpful to you. Uh, yeah. So the faith, having faith that there's something bigger going on, and that somehow things will get better. That if you do the work, and that if you consciously set an intention to heal and to feel better, that with time and that work and consciousness and awareness and community, that you will feel better. You will feel good again. And then this other little excerpt. Okay. And this is what I've kind of already said a bit, is that um, that heartbreak and that grief can break you wide open. And at the beginning of the show, I said that for me, I feel that my grief is holy, because it's brought me so close to God. It's brought me so close to my God. It has deepened my faith in a way that I can't imagine. Um, I can't imagine not having this depth that I have now. And so I read this little blurb that says that heartbreak is a strange healer of our souls. And I believe that. I believe that, again, that is the invitation of grief, is that it invites us to question, to ask questions, and to move close to God, and to allow God to comfort us, and to listen and be still, and to surrender. Because for me, in surrendering, that brought me peace, and that peace, I believe, is the divine holding me, and saying, yes, you're okay, and one day you'll understand everything. So I think that grief and loss and that kind of pain, it opens us up, if we allow it to bring us closer to the divine, where we are able to connect with others, and have sympathy and empathy and dependence on others, to have that sense of community, to let others hold us when we need to be held, and to hold others when they need to be held. Um, it helps us to connect with the greater whole, the collective, if you will, to other people and community. And so now I'm kind of coming full circle, because at the beginning of the show, I also said that we're not meant to do life alone. And we're definitely not meant to do grief alone. And I know I've probably said this on this show before, but I love the quote by Rumi that says, we're all just walking each other home. Because we are all walking each other home. And I think the invitation, the challenge, however you would like to describe that, but the invitation is, how well can we do that? How well can we walk one another home? How well can we be there for each other, and hold each other, and let each other know that, hey, yes, you're on your own journey. Yes, I can't feel your grief exactly the way you feel it. I can't do that, but I can hold you, and I can bear witness to it. I can walk with you as you go through this journey. That that is what it's all about. So, friends, I hope that made sense. I did have notes, but I kind of wandered around in the woods a little bit. And I hope that whatever resonated, if there was anything that resonated, I hope that you can take what resonates, and whatever doesn't, just leave it behind. As you walk through your life path and your grief path, I wish you so much love and so much peace today and every day. Faith, hope, love. Those are the things. Peace. Let the light shine in, and be there for each other. And I'm here for you. And with that, I will wish you well and hope to see you again soon. So take really good care of yourselves, and have a great evening. Take care.